Welcome back to the File X channel.
Yes, hello. I think the guy attacked my neighbor.
You think someone attacked your neighbor?
Yes. I heard yelling.
Earlier was the content of the emergency call reporting the crime. On the other end of the line was the trembling voice of a woman. She provided the police with the address where the incident took place, but she did not disclose her identity or that of the victim. The police promptly arrived at the scene as reported in the town of Stamford, Connecticut, USA. However, by the time they arrived, the victim was already lifeless in an empty house. The calendar on the wall showed the date as November 8, 2002. According to initial investigations, the victim was identified as Annalisa Raimundo, 32 years old, who had lived and grown up with her family in Michigan, USA. Anna's parents, originally from the Philippines, were renowned and affluent doctors. They deeply cherished their daughter and provided her with the best education and love possible. With such high expectations from her parents, Anna excelled academically and graduated from Harvard University. The house where the crime occurred was a gift from her parents to celebrate her graduation. Not long after her graduation, Anna began working for a private pharmaceutical company called Purdue Pharma. With her exceptional ability to excel in every task assigned, Anna earned admiration from both her superiors and colleagues. However, shortly before her sudden passing, during a time when Anna was being considered for a promotion, she made a bold decision to resign and join another company in New Jersey. During the transition period, Anna rarely went to work, visiting the office only once or twice a week to handle essential tasks. During their investigation and interviews with Anna's colleagues, the police uncovered another crucial piece of information. At that time, Anna was in a relationship with a charming coworker named Nelson Sessler. Nelson was immediately investigated as a suspect in Anna's sudden demise. However, after thorough interrogation, Nelson was quickly cleared of suspicion as he had a solid alibi. Returning to the only clue, the traces and images collected from the crime scene, the police obtained critical information from the forensic team. They discovered bloodstains on the bathroom sink that did not belong to the victim, and it was highly likely that it came from the perpetrator. However, as the identity of the perpetrator was still unknown, the blood sample provided no substantial leads. Consequently, Anna's case nearly reached a deadlock. 5 months later, on March the 22nd, 2003, while the police were still unable to trace the suspect in Anna's case, they unexpectedly received a call from a citizen reporting another crime in a car. Officers nearby quickly rushed to the scene and found 2 people inside the reported vehicle. One was a man holding onto a wound, and the other was a woman sitting tensely in the car. The police immediately ordered the woman to step out of the vehicle and took the critically injured man to the hospital for emergency treatment. After regaining consciousness, the man identified himself as Paul Christos and stated that the woman responsible for the incident was his wife, Sheila Davalou. Sheila was arrested for investigation. During interrogation, Sheila repeatedly claimed that her husband's injury was merely an unintended accident. However, the police did not believe her story. They searched the couple's home and examined both of their vehicles, as well as every detail from Sheila's mobile phone. What the police uncovered left them stunned. The person Sheila frequently contacted was none other than Nelson Sessler, the boyfriend of the deceased Anna. It would be incomplete not to begin with the woman with a delicate face, Sheila Davalou. Sheila, 34 years old, was born and raised in Iran in a Muslim family. Sheila's parents were also intellectuals, with one working in the healthcare sector and the other as a scientific researcher. Through hard work and unity, they labored day and night. accumulating wealth that elevated Sheila's family to the ranks of the affluent. In 1970, when Sheila was just 1 year old, Iran began to experience negative shifts, with various riots and uprisings brewing and erupting. As a result, Sheila's parents decided to move the entire family to a more promising land, the United States. With their knowledge and connections, Sheila's parents were able to purchase a beautiful home in a wealthy neighborhood called Yorktown in New York, where they started a new life. Shortly after settling there, Sheila's mother became pregnant again, this time with a baby boy. However, the harsh reality was that while Sheila was very intelligent, her younger brother was quite the opposite. From birth and as he grew, the boy was not very sharp. Doctors diagnosed him with a severe neurological condition, meaning his cognitive development would not be like that of a normal person. From then on, Sheila's parents raised her brother in silence, not wanting others to know that their family had a child with a mental illness. This led many, including neighbors, to believe that Sheila was an only child. Sheila was pampered by her parents from a young age. They enrolled her in a prestigious private school in New York at the time, hoping she would follow in their footsteps and pursue a career in the esteemed medical field, and Sheila did not disappoint them. At school, Sheila consistently excelled, achieving high scores that made Mr. and Mrs. Davalou even more proud of her. Sheila received boundless love and care from her parents. However, as Sheila entered her teenage years, she began to develop feelings for the opposite sex and started perceiving her parents differently. While they wanted Sheila to embrace their Muslim faith, this came with restrictions on her interactions with male classmates. For most Iranian Muslims, it was nearly forbidden for females to socialize or go out alone with males. Sheila was closely monitored in this regard, not allowed to go out alone with any male friend because she was Muslim. But to Sheila, this seemed unreasonable. As she grew older, Sheila's thoughts increasingly diverged from her parents' views on this matter. She openly discussed and occasionally argued with her parents about her desire to meet and date others. Yet, in most of these debates, Sheila found herself on the losing side. As time passed, Sheila finally graduated from high school and decided to pursue a major in biochemistry at Stony Brook University, part of the State University of New York system. At that time, Sheila was 18 years old, the legal age for marriage in New York State. Her parents decided to arrange a marriage for her with a 25-year-old Iranian man named Faris. Unable to argue against her parents' wishes, Sheila agreed to their decision, partly out of curiosity about what it would be like to be close to a man, something her parents had never allowed her to experience. Sheila and Faris's wedding was soon held. Her husband had a stable job and a mature outlook on life. However, after becoming a married woman, Sheila began to feel that something wasn't quite right. Her experiences in married life were nothing like what she had imagined. Sheila gradually realized that the issue stemmed from the fact that she didn't have romantic feelings for her husband. This newfound awareness caused Sheila to start viewing her male classmates at university differently. During a study group session, Sheila met a man 2 years older than her. His name was Paul Christos, a teaching assistant for Sheila's research group, a man so seemingly perfect that she couldn't help but feel drawn to him from their very first encounter. Likewise, when Paul saw Sheila and noticed the way she looked at him, he began to develop a very special feeling. He was captivated by Sheila's smile and her charming front tooth, which gave her a distinctive allure. Moreover, her black hair and brown eyes were both unusual and mesmerizing. The more Paul interacted with her, the more attracted he became. Every time Sheila and Paul exchanged glances during their group sessions, Sheila would flash a mysterious smile. Gradually, their feelings for each other grew stronger, evolving into a romantic relationship. Sheila and Paul began meeting outside of class, spending time together, sharing intimate conversations, and caring for one another like a genuine couple. All the while, Paul remained unaware that Sheila was already married. Over the next 3 months, the couple became increasingly intimate. On several occasions, Paul even visited Sheila's home in Manhattan. They spent nights together, deepening their bond and intensifying their relationship. But during Paul's visits to Sheila's home, didn't her husband ever catch them? In reality, Sheila and Ferris owned 2 homes, a primary residence in New Jersey and a secondary home in Manhattan. Most of the time, Ferris stayed at their main house in New Jersey, which meant that Paul, during his visits to Manhattan, had no idea about Ferris's existence, and vice versa. Through sweet and convincing lies, Sheila successfully concealed the truth from both her husband and her lover. However, somehow, Ferris eventually discovered that his wife was having an affair. He was deeply shocked by this revelation because Sheila was a Muslim, came from a respectable family, and was an educated woman. Yet, she had chosen to act in a way that defied morality. One morning, as Sheila was sleeping soundly in their New Jersey home, Ferris decided to confront Paul and tell him the whole truth, hoping to dissuade them from continuing their wrongdoings. By this point, Sheila's extramarital affair had lasted for 1.5 years. While Paul was at work in Manhattan, he received a call from an unknown number. He answered, and on the other end was a man's voice. The man introduced himself as Ferris, Sheila's husband. When they met at the agreed location, Paul saw that Ferris was a calm and composed man. He behaved courteously and showed no hostility toward his wife's lover. Ferris explained the whole truth about Sheila, that she was married, that they had been together for nearly 7 years, and that he hoped Paul would stop seeing her. Paul felt a wave of panic. Not long ago, he had been planning to propose to Sheila, and now, standing before him, was someone claiming to be her husband. In the end, Paul agreed to go with Ferris to New Jersey to get to the bottom of the matter. When the taxi stopped in front of a large house, Ferris walked up to the door, opened it, and called out. Moments later, Sheila's voice responded. Paul was stunned when he saw Sheila and immediately confronted her, asking if this man was really her husband. Sheila nodded, and overwhelmed by the truth, Paul quietly turned around, hailed a taxi, and returned to Manhattan. Of course, Sheila wasn't about to let things end there. She called Paul again and explained that her marriage was forced, painting Ferris as a controlling husband to cast herself as the victim. After hearing her story, Paul once again chose to believe Sheila and resolved to help her escape what he now saw as a miserable marriage. The night after Sheila met Paul at the house in New Jersey, while Ferris was sleeping, he suddenly woke up due to a strange smell in the house. He went to the kitchen to investigate and was horrified to discover that the gas stove was turned on, while all the windows were tightly shut. Ferris quickly turned off the stove and opened all the windows to ventilate the house. At that moment, he knew exactly who was responsible and realized that Sheila no longer wanted to salvage their marriage. Her actions had turned malicious. Ultimately, Ferris decided to grant Sheila's request for a divorce. Although she got what she wanted, as she held the court's divorce decree in her hands, Sheila cried in front of Paul, saying she had just ruined Ferris's life. Paul comforted her, reassuring her that everything would soon pass. A few years later, Sheila completed her master's degree and secured a job at Purdue Pharma, a leading pharmaceutical company in the United States at the time. She was hired for a high-paying position in drug data research, while Paul continued his work in research and teaching at Columbia University. By then, the two had been together long enough to decide to get married in May 2000. But things didn't go smoothly. Just over 2 weeks before their wedding, Sheila told Paul she wanted to take a trip to France with her close girlfriends for about 10 days before starting her married life again. Paul cheerfully agreed, as he was quite busy himself and couldn't take her on trips often. In reality, Sheila lied. She didn't travel with her friends but went alone to France. There, she secretly met and had an affair with a local man, someone who was both physically attractive and charming in conversation. They quickly spent a night together, completely disregarding the fact that Sheila was about to get married. After that one-night stand, Sheila returned to New York filled with regret, and her mood seemed to worsen with time. Nevertheless, she decided to marry Paul, and their wedding took place on May 28, 2000. After the ceremony, Paul and Sheila bought a lovely house in a suburban neighborhood in New York. At the time, Paul was busy with research and teaching at the university, while Sheila worked at a pharmaceutical company. In terms of free time, Sheila's schedule was more relaxed compared to her husband's. To expand her social circle with colleagues, Sheila often stayed after work to drink beer and chat with her coworkers. While conversing with them, Sheila never mentioned her marriage, leading everyone to believe she was still single. A year had passed since her second marriage, and Sheila seemed to be slipping back into her old bad habits, developing feelings for another man who wasn't her husband. This time, it was a young man at her company named Nelson Sessler. At the time, Nelson was in a relationship with Anna, the victim, but he assumed that since the company was relatively large, there wouldn't be any chance for Sheila to meet Anna and vice versa. Moreover, Anna had just decided to leave the company, making things even more convenient for him if he wanted to pursue another relationship behind Anna's back. For this reason, Nelson chose to lie and claim he was single. Sheila and Anna were complete opposites in personality. While Sheila was arrogant and often ignored those she considered less intelligent than herself, Anna was gentle and warm-hearted. She was admired by many for her intelligence and constant kindness. Nevertheless, boredom seemed to have ignited the flame of betrayal, clouding Nelson's judgment. To him, the novelty of someone like Sheila was far more appealing. But everything changed when one day, Anna invited Nelson to her home. Upon seeing Anna's luxurious and elegant apartment, Nelson realized what could truly change his life. He thought about the shared house he lived in, with its 4 separate bathrooms and a woman, Sheila, who was attractive but far from perfect compared to Anna. Nelson immediately suggested moving in with Anna. To his delight, Anna agreed wholeheartedly. Nelson then began to worry about his relationship with Sheila. To him, Sheila was nothing more than a casual fling. Moreover, Anna's superior circumstances were too good an opportunity for him to pass up. Therefore, he decided to end his ambiguous relationship with Sheila to fully commit to Anna. Regarding Sheila, when she heard Nelson's breakup speech, it was also the moment she learned about the existence of Anna, Nelson's ideal girlfriend, and possibly his future wife. At that time, Sheila acted as if nothing had happened. Outwardly, she agreed to end the relationship with Nelson, but deep down, Sheila didn't feel the same. In truth, she had become deeply entangled in the illicit affair with Nelson. As her indifference toward her husband grew, so did her realization that Nelson was irresistibly attractive and captivating, making it impossible for her to let him go. Sheila began investigating Anna. Although the two worked in different departments and had never crossed paths at the company, Sheila managed to gather information about Anna through coworkers and social media. She discovered that Anna was, by all accounts, the perfect woman. Beautiful, talented, and, most notably, wealthy. Sheila believed these were the very qualities that made Nelson end his relationship with her. Even though Sheila still maintained what appeared to be a perfect marriage with Paul, She couldn't stop obsessing over the fact that her lover had chosen to leave her for another woman, something she felt should have been her decision to make. Sheila hated being in a passive position like this. Her obsession with Nelson grew stronger every day. As a result, Sheila found a way to remotely access Nelson's phone, stealing his passwords to monitor his activities. She used this information to track his schedule and conveniently appear at the same places as him, making it seem like a coincidence. Time and again, Nelson was startled to see Sheila wherever he went. But Sheila didn't stop there. When she realized that Nelson and Anna's relationship was becoming more serious, her jealousy only deepened. At home, Sheila would frequently lash out at Paul without any clear reason. She would bring up her coworkers at the company, saying that one of her friends was caught in a complicated situation and didn't know how to handle it. Sheila would recount her own story to Paul, but substitute different names, using Melissa for herself, Trust for Nelson, while keeping Anna's name unchanged. Paul listened attentively, and Sheila would ask what her friend should do in such a scenario. Naturally, someone as composed as Paul refrained from giving specific advice, merely suggesting that her coworker should handle the situation on their own. Upon hearing Paul's seemingly indifferent response, Sheila remained silent. In the end, no one could have guessed that Sheila, in her determination to reclaim what she wanted, would decide to eliminate Anna. On November 8, 2002, Sheila went to Anna's apartment in Stanford and took the life of its female owner. After committing the crime, Sheila calmly walked to the sink, washed away the evidence of her heinous act, and fled the scene. After leaving Anna's house, Sheila stopped at a nearby restaurant and used a public payphone to call 911. Pretending to be Anna's neighbor, she told the operator, "I think there's a man attacking my neighbor." Of course, to avoid revealing her crime, she refused to provide her name to the 911 dispatcher and only gave Anna's address. When the police arrived, they found Anna had passed away, her body showing severe trauma. At the time the crime was discovered, Nelson was grieving the loss of his girlfriend. Sheila seized the opportunity to approach him, offering comfort and support in an attempt to rekindle their relationship. Sheila began frequently inviting Nelson to stay overnight at her home. Each time she told Paul, "My sick younger brother is coming to visit, and he doesn't like meeting strangers, so please leave the house, temporarily to make him feel comfortable." Respecting his wife, Paul packed his belongings and left the house every weekend. This illicit affair continued until March the 22nd, 2003. When the car tied to the crime was reported, it marked the point at which Sheila had grown tired of her secret affair and once again sought to eliminate someone to fulfill her dream of living openly with her lover. This time, the person she wanted to remove was Paul, the husband she had once chosen herself. March 22nd, 2003. After nearly a year without intimacy in their marriage, Sheila suddenly suggested a stimulating bedroom game with Paul. Recognizing that their relationship had grown increasingly cold, Paul was eager to rebuild their bond and agreed without suspicion. The rules of the game were simple. One person would be tied to a chair and blindfolded, while the other placed objects on their body for them to guess. Whoever guessed the most items correctly would win. Sheila went first. She asked Paul to tie her hands to the chair and cover her eyes. Sheila began guessing the objects Paul placed on her, managing to identify a few correctly. Then it was Paul's turn. Excited by the game, he let Sheila tie his hands to the chair and blindfold him. Sheila began with simple objects that Paul could guess easily. But suddenly, for the final item, Sheila placed something cold and sharp against Paul's body. Before he could guess, he was unexpectedly injured and started bleeding profusely. Realizing Sheila had hurt him, Paul demanded that she untie him and remove his blindfold. Sheila repeatedly apologized, insisting it was an accident during the game. Paul, bleeding heavily, urged Sheila to call for help. However, Sheila twice dialed 911, but hung up before the call could connect. Finally, she decided to drive Paul to the hospital instead of waiting for an ambulance. While Paul held his wound, Sheila drove. However, upon reaching the hospital parking lot, Sheila suddenly attacked Paul again with a sharp object, leaving him on the brink of collapse. Fortunately, a few passers-by witnessed the incident and called the police. The investigation brought to light damning evidence against Sheila. Paul's testimony, coupled with Nelson's accusations, painted a damning picture. However, that alone wasn't enough to prosecute her fully. Investigators compared blood samples found at Anna's home to Sheila's DNA, confirming a match. They also unearthed indirect evidence from the 911 call Sheila made after her crime against Anna. Using voice recognition software, experts analyzed the recording from the payphone call and compared it with Sheila's recorded voice. Both Nelson and Paul identified Sheila as the caller. February 10, 2004. In Sheila's trial, the jury accepted the prosecution's evidence and found her guilty. She was sentenced to 50 years in prison for murdering Anna, plus an additional 25 years for attempting to murder her husband, Paul. Sheila would not be eligible for parole until 2079, by which time she would be over 110 years old. In 2015, Sheila appealed her conviction for Anna's murder. In her appeal, Sheila argued that Paul's testimony regarding their conversations about the love triangle involving herself, Anna, and Nelson should have been inadmissible. Sheila claimed that these communications were protected by spousal privilege since they occurred while she and Paul were married. However, the Supreme Court ruled that such communications were not protected under state law, as they lacked the emotional trust, loyalty, and integrity necessary to qualify for spousal privilege. Sheila's original sentence remained unchanged, and she continued to serve her deserved punishment. While it's uncertain if Sheila will ever feel remorse for her actions, her sentencing stands as a fair resolution for her victims, especially Anna. As for sympathizing with a woman forced into a marriage by her parents, it's difficult to justify Sheila's actions. Her distorted understanding of love and moral decay seemed evident from the beginning. Even after marrying Paul, a man she claimed to love, she remained unsatisfied, consumed by her selfish and destructive desires. Ultimately, every illicit relationship must come to an end, and one truth remains unwavering: there will never be true rewards for those driven by cruelty and deceit.